If they'd listened for 5 minutes, I would have made them $50 million. Instead, they laughed. So I left taking the system they dismissed with me. Before the emails, before the buyout, before the chaos, they told me I didn't fit. What they didn't know, I built everything they stood on. Now it was mine. The morning I walked out of North Edge Systems, nobody noticed. By the time they realized what was missing, it was already too late. They'd created their own perfect storm, and I was just the one who let it rain. My name is Erin Caldwell, and at 36, I'd spent the last 8 years building something extraordinary in the basement labs of North Edge Systems. Not that anyone upstairs knew it. To them, I was just another systems engineer, the quiet one who fixed their problems and made their demos run smoothly, the one who stayed late debugging code while they took clients to dinner. St. Louis in February was gray and unforgiving, matching the fluorescent wasteland of Conference Room B where my career would effectively end. I'd prepared for weeks, rehearsing my presentation until every word was perfect. The real-time analytics system I designed could revolutionize remote patient monitoring, cutting operational costs by 70% while improving response times to critical events. I'd built it nights and weekends, pouring everything I had into elegant algorithms that could predict system failures before they happened. The meeting was scheduled for 2:30 p.m., right after the executives' extended lunch. I watched them file in CEO Marcus Webb checking his phone, COO Diana Morrison shuffling papers, and our new CFO, Vince Barrett, who'd been brought in 6 months ago to optimize human capital. He had that particular brand of MBA confidence that came from never having built anything himself. "So, Erin," Marcus began without looking up, "you wanted to discuss the monitoring system project." I stood, clicked to my first slide. "I've completed the prototype for an integrated analytics platform that can process real-time data from our entire device network. Initial testing shows—" "Wait," Vince interrupted, finally glancing at the screen. "You built this yourself?" "Yes. Over the past 18 months, I've developed a neural processing framework that can handle concurrent data streams from up to 10,000 devices with latency under 0.1 seconds. Diana's pen stopped moving. That got their attention. I continued through the slide's architecture diagrams, performance metrics, cost projections. The system wasn't just functional. It was beautiful in the way only engineers understand. Clean code, elegant solutions, the kind of infrastructure that could scale infinitely. "The commercial trial phase would require dedicated resources," I said, reaching the part I dreaded and anticipated equally. "I'd like to lead the implementation team." Vince laughed, actually laughed, like I'd suggested something absurd. "You're brilliant, Erin, but not leadership material. We need someone who can interface with stakeholders, drive strategic initiatives. I built the entire system. I understand every component." "Technical knowledge doesn't translate to executive capability," he said, using that tone reserved for explaining obvious things to slow children. "We'll find someone appropriate to run the trial. You'll provide technical support, of course." My throat felt tight, but I pushed forward. "Then I'd like to propose an alternative arrangement, a profit-sharing agreement for the system I created, since I developed it independently." "Everything you create belongs to North Edge," Marcus cut in, suddenly interested enough to make eye contact. "Standard employment contract. You know this." "The core framework was developed on my own time, using my personal equipment." "Erin," Diana's voice carried that fatal note of condescending sympathy, "let's not make this adversarial. You're a valuable team member, but this isn't how we do things. Submit your documentation to Bradley's team, and they'll take it from here." Bradley Chen, the VP of Innovation who once asked me to explain what an API was. I stood there for a moment, watching them return to their phones and papers, already dismissing me. 8 years. 8 years of solving their impossible problems, of being the one they called at 11:45 p.m. when servers crashed, of building the infrastructure their entire company ran on. "Thank you for clarifying," I said finally. My voice sounded strange, hollow but steady. "I appreciate your transparency about my role here." Vince nodded absently. "Glad we're on the same page. Can you have that documentation ready by Monday?" "Of course." I gathered my laptop, my carefully prepared handouts they hadn't touched. As I reached the door, Marcus called out, "Oh, Aaron, great work on this. Really innovative stuff. I turned back, smiled the smile I'd perfected over years of swallowing opinions. Just doing my job? The walk back to my desk took forever and no time at all. I sat down, opened my email, and typed a single line to myself, "They made their choice. Now I make mine." That night, while St. Louis slept under a blanket of fresh snow, I sat in my home office and opened a browser tab I'd bookmarked months ago, LLC registration for Missouri. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before typing Caldwell Neural Systems. The morning after the meeting, I arrived at North Edge at 7:15 a.m., same as always, scanned my badge, nodded to security, took the elevator to the third floor. Everything normal, everything routine. Inside, I was calculating. Morning, Aaron, Bradley Martinez, our newly promoted VP of Innovation, practically bounced past my desk. Heard you've got something exciting for us to look at. Can't wait to dig in. I smiled, the same practiced expression from yesterday. Just sent you the preliminary documentation. Fantastic. We'll make something great out of this. The words sat in my stomach like a stone. For the next 2 weeks, I became the model employee. I attended meetings where Bradley presented our innovative approach to real-time analytics. I nodded when Diana praised his vision. I fixed bugs in systems I'd built from scratch while listening to Vince explain why my salary adjustment request didn't align with company metrics. But I wasn't angry. Anger was hot, impulsive, destructive. What filled me was something else entirely, a cold, crystalline clarity. They saw me as infrastructure, reliable and invisible. Fine, infrastructure could be removed. Every evening, I drove home to my duplex in Soulard, made dinner, and then descended into what I'd started calling the war room, my spare bedroom, transformed, whiteboards covered in system architectures, 3 monitors running continuous code commits, legal documents spread across a folding table. The first call I made was to Tanya Whitmore. "Aaron Caldwell." Her voice was warm through the phone. "Tell me you're finally going independent." Something like that. I outlined the situation, careful to stick to facts. Silence. Then, "Those bastards. You know I left FDA consulting because of exactly this kind of bullshit. I've seen what they did to you. What do you need?" "Regulatory guidance. FDA approval pathways for medical device software." "Done. Pro bono. When do we start?" The second week, I filed for LLC formation. Caldwell Neural Systems became real at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Birth certificate printed from Missouri's Secretary of State website. I held the paper, feeling its weight. At work, I volunteered for documentation duty. Happy to help Bradley's team understand the technical specifications, I offered in the all-hands meeting. Vince actually praised my collaborative spirit. What they didn't know, I was creating 2 versions of everything. The official documentation went to Bradley Functional, but stripped of the elegant solutions that made the system sing. The real documentation went home with me each night, uploaded to private repositories, encrypted and backed up in 3 locations. I started taking calls during lunch. Austin-based developers who'd worked with me on open-source projects, a former MIT classmate now running a venture fund. Each conversation carefully orchestrated from my car in the parking garage. "The thing is," I told David Park, the investor, "I'm building something that will revolutionize remote patient monitoring, but I need runway." "How much?" $2 million to start. I can show you the prototype. If it's half as good as your Replicase work, I'm interested. When can we meet?" "I'll be in Austin next month." The facade at North Edge never cracked. I submitted reports on time. I smiled in the break room. I even helped Bradley prepare for his presentation to the board about his innovative system. He thanked me publicly, called me invaluable support. 3 weeks after the meeting that changed everything, I sat in my cubicle at 9:20 p.m., officially debugging a server issue. Unofficially, I was running a final backup of my personal development environment. Every algorithm I'd created, every optimization I'd discovered during those late nights, all of it flowing quietly to my secured servers. An email popped up from HR. Reminder: all company IP must remain on company servers. Please ensure no unauthorized copies of proprietary code exist on personal devices. I almost laughed. They were worried about the wrong things, as always. The code on company servers was like a body without a soul functional, but missing everything that made it extraordinary. The soul was mine, had always been mine. That night, I made a list on my kitchen counter. Patent applications for core algorithms personal development. Prior to employment, investor meetings scheduled. Development team identified. Regulatory consultant secured. Competitive analysis complete. At the bottom, I wrote, resignation letter draft. Save for optimal timing. I poured a glass of wine, stood at my window watching the St. Louis arch lit against the night sky. Somewhere in this city, Vince Barrett was probably sleeping soundly, confident in his human capital optimization. Marcus Webb was likely reviewing quarterly projections that depended on a system he didn't understand. Diana Morrison might be planning the next reorg that would shuffle talent like playing cards. They had no idea what was coming. That was the beauty of being invisible. Nobody notices when you start to disappear. The email was perfectly crafted, professional to a fault. Dear team, I need to request a personal leave of absence beginning March 15th due to family health matters. I expect to return within 4 to 6 weeks. I'll ensure all current projects are documented and transitioned. Thank you for understanding. Aaron. Diana approved it within an hour. Of course, Aaron, family comes first. Bradley's team can handle things while you're gone. If only she knew the family I was tending to was my newborn company. I flew to Austin on a Tuesday, using miles accumulated from all those conferences North Edge had sent me to the ones where I'd presented while executives networked. David Park met me at a coffee shop in the Domain. The kind of place where million-dollar deals happened over cortados. Show me, he said simply. I opened my laptop, ran the demo I'd perfected in my home office. Real-time patient data flowing through the system like water through a perfectly engineered channel. Predictive algorithms catching anomalies before they became critical events. Response times that made current market leaders look prehistoric. David watched in silence. When I finished, he closed his laptop. How is North Edge not all over this? They just don't know what they have. Their loss, I'm in for $2.5 million. Who else are you talking to? By the end of the week, I had $5 million in committed funding and a team of 12 developers ready to start the moment I gave the word. Tanya had already begun preparing FDA submission strategies, working from her home office in Bethesda. The beautiful thing, she told me over video call, is that remote monitoring software falls under de novo classification if we position it right. We can fast-track this. Back in St. Louis, I maintained the charade for 3 more weeks. I came to the office sporadically, citing ongoing family issues. When I did appear, I was helpful, accommodating, invisible. I watched Bradley struggle with implementation issues, offering just enough guidance to keep things moving without revealing the deeper architecture. The real work happened at night. I'd rented a small office space in the Cortex district, paying cash, registering it under Caldwell Neural Systems. The developers in Austin worked remotely, committing code to repositories North Edge would never see. We rebuilt the system from the ground up, but better every limitation I'd worked around at North Edge, every compromise I'd made for their legacy infrastructure, all of it stripped away. The new version was pure Nerva, I called it, after the Roman goddess of crafts and strategy. Why that name? Sanjay, my lead developer, asked during a late-night debugging session. Because she was the goddess of the precise strike, I said. And that's what this is. The patent applications were crucial. I'd been so careful over the years. The core algorithms, the ones that made everything work, had been developed on my own time, on my own machines, before I'd ever shown them to North Edge. My employment contract gave them rights to work created for the company, but the foundation, the breakthrough insights that came to me at 2:30 a.m. in my apartment, those were mine. Tanya connected me with a patent attorney who specialized in software IP. You have clear documentation of independent development, he asked. I showed him Git commits from my personal repositories, time-stamped emails to myself outlining concepts, notebook pages photographed and dated, years of preparation for a moment I'd hoped would never come. This is excellent, he said. North Edge will have a hard time claiming ownership of the underlying innovations. The hardest part was maintaining composure when I did go into the office. Listening to Marcus talk about Q3 projections based on Bradley's initiative, watching Vince calculate bonuses for executives who couldn't code a Hello World program, sitting in meetings where my work was dissected by people who didn't understand it. But I smiled. I nodded. I played the part of the grateful employee on personal leave, checking in occasionally, being helpful when asked. "Aaron, good to see you," Vince said during one of my appearances. "How's your family situation?" "Improving. Thank you for asking." "Good, good. We need you back soon. Bradley's team is making progress, but they could use your technical support." Technical support, after everything, that's what I was to them. "Of course," I said. "Happy to help however I can." That night, I met with my team via secure video conference. 12 faces on screen, all brilliant, all hungry, all ready to build something extraordinary. 2 weeks until launch, I announced. Phoenix Care has agreed to exclusive integration rights. We're going to show the medical device industry what real-time analytics actually means. The energy was electric. These people, my people, now understood what we were building. They saw the vision, contributed to it, enhanced it. Everything North Edge had failed to recognize. As the call ended, I looked around my Cortex office. Whiteboards filled with architecture diagrams, monitors showing continuous integration pipelines, a printed photo of Conference Room B taped to the wall. My reminder of why I was here, the extraction required surgical precision. I'd learned from years of watching corporate acquisitions that the winner wasn't who had the most, but who knew exactly what to take. My employment contract with North Edge was clear work product created during company time. Using company resources belonged to them, but lawyers, I discovered, loved gray areas, and I'd painted my masterpiece in shades of gray they'd never notice. The key, my IP attorney explained, is proving parallel development. You created foundational work independently, then applied general concepts at North Edge. The implementation they have is derivative, but the core innovations predate your employment. I pulled up commit logs from my personal GitHub, dating back 3 years before North Edge. Neural Pathway Optimization for Distributed Systems. The project was called academic sounding, theoretical. What it really was, the beating heart of everything I'd built since. The Friday before my return to work, I stayed late at North Edge. Bradley had gone home at 5:30 p.m., leaving his usual mess of half-understood code comments. I sat at my desk, running automated scripts I'd written months ago. They looked like routine maintenance cleaning up test data, optimizing database queries. What they actually did was much more elegant. Every test instance I'd created, every proof of concept model trained on my algorithms deleted, not maliciously, just cleaned up. After all, test data shouldn't clutter production systems. The shell remained, functional enough to run basic operations, but the intelligence, the adaptive learning components that made response times drop below 0.1 seconds, those lived only in my personal repositories now. I documented everything meticulously in the official system, cleaned test environments, removed deprecated experimental modules, system functioning within normal parameters. All true, all devastating. The beauty was, they'd never notice until they tried to scale. The system would work fine for their current load, but when they attempted the commercial trial, when they pushed for the performance I'd promised, they'd find hollow architecture, like a house with no foundation. "You're sure this is legal?" Sanjay asked during our late-night call. Every line of code in their repository was written on company time. They own it completely. I pulled up the architecture diagram. But code without understanding is just syntax. They have the recipe, not the chemistry. That weekend, I performed the final migration. The AWS instances spun up under Caldwell Neural Systems hummed to life, receiving the reconstructed system, not copied rebuilt from first principles, using my original innovations, improved with everything I'd learned at North Edge. Monday morning, I returned to work as scheduled. Concerned colleagues asked about my family. I thanked them for their patience, assured them everything was resolved now. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Aaron." Bradley caught me at the coffee machine. "Perfect timing. We're doing the first scale test this afternoon. Could use your eyes on it." "Of course." I watched him run the test at 2:15 p.m. Saw his confidence falter as response times lagged. The system functioned, but like a sports car running on regular gas, all potential. No power. "That's Weird, he muttered, checking configurations. It was faster in the demos. Different load conditions, I suggested helpfully. Maybe we need to optimize the clustering algorithm. He nodded eagerly, not realizing the clustering algorithm was precisely what I'd removed. Yeah, can you take a look? I spent 3 hours providing suggestions that sounded helpful but led nowhere. Dead ends disguised as solutions. Bradley's frustration grew, but he couldn't admit he didn't understand his own innovation. That night, I met with my team for final launch preparations. Phoenix Care's integration was complete. Their CEO had personally tested Nerva, watching patient vitals stream in with impossible clarity. "This is what we've been waiting for," she'd said. "When can we announce?" 2 weeks, I'd promised. The patent applications were filed under careful categories: Method and System for Predictive Analysis in Distributed Medical Devices, Neural Network Optimization for Real-Time Data Processing, and 6 others, each one carving out intellectual territory. Northedge didn't even know existed. I archived every email, every commit log, every timestamp that proved my parallel development. My lawyer had assembled a defensive portfolio that would make Northedge's legal team weep if they ever figured out what happened. The following Tuesday, I submitted my resignation. 2 weeks' notice, professional to the end. "This is unexpected," Diana said, calling me into her office. "Is it the family situation?" "Actually, I've decided to pursue other opportunities. It's time for a change." "But the analytics project Bradley needs you." I smiled, the same smile I'd perfected in conference room B. "Bradley's a visionary. I'm sure he'll manage." She tried to negotiate. A raise finally, a better title, flexible hours. Everything I'd asked for before, offered now when it was far too late. "I appreciate that," I said, "but I've made my decision." My last day. I cleaned my desk methodically. 8 years reduced to a banker's box. Bradley stopped by. Panic barely concealed. "Hey, Aaron, before you go, the system's still running slow. Maybe you could document." "Everything's in the wiki," I assured him. "Every function, every parameter, it's all there." All there, and completely useless without understanding the why behind the what. But he'd figure that out eventually. Security walked me out at 5 p.m. sharp, standard procedure. As the doors closed behind me, I felt nothing but lightness. In 12 hours, Nerva would go live. Northedge's innovation would sputter along until someone realized it was a corpse wearing makeup. I sat in my car in the parking garage, sent one final email from my personal account. "Caldwell Neural Systems begins operations tomorrow. Thank you to our partners at Phoenix Care for believing in true innovation. The future of medical analytics starts now." Then I drove home, past the arch, toward the office where my real work waited. The launch was deliberately quiet. No press releases, no fanfare. Just Nerva going live at 6 a.m. Central Time, integrated seamlessly into Phoenix Care's infrastructure. Within minutes, their monitoring stations lit up with data streams moving like silk smooth, fast, predictive. I watched from my office in Cortex. 6 monitors showing real-time performance metrics. Sanjay and 3 other developers were there in person. The rest connected remotely. Coffee cups accumulated as we tracked every microsecond of latency, every successful prediction, every alert that fired exactly when it should. "Response time holding steady at 0.08 seconds, Amit called out. 40,000 concurrent connections. "Scale test in progress," confirmed Rachel from Austin. "Pushing to 100,000. The system breathed, expanded, adapted, everything Northedge's hollow shell couldn't do. Nerva did effortlessly. We'd built it right this time, no legacy constraints, no corporate compromises, no executives demanding features they didn't understand. By noon, Phoenix Care's chief medical officer called personally. "Aaron, I'm watching our ICU alerts in real time. We just prevented 2 critical events because Nerva caught the patterns 15 minutes before traditional monitoring would have flagged them. This is revolutionary." "Thank you, Dr. Morrison. We're just getting started." The name coincidence wasn't lost on me, another Morrison, but this one recognized value when she saw it. Within 3 days, MedTech Frontier picked up the story. Phoenix Care's secret weapon, Nerva Analytics platform, promises sub-second response times. The article was technical, buried on page 3 of their digital edition, but the right people read MedTech Frontier. My phone buzzed constantly. Former colleagues from conferences, investors who'd passed on NorthEdge's last funding round, competitors fishing for information. I ignored most of them, focusing on what mattered, making Nerva indispensable. "We need to talk about scaling the team," David said during our weekly investor call. "The integration pipeline is full. Every major healthcare system wants a demo." "Controlled growth," I insisted. "We do this right or not at all." I'd learned from watching NorthEdge bloat itself with middle managers and process evangelists. Caldwell Neural Systems would stay lean, focused. Every hire was technical, every decision driven by data. The office in Nashville came next, our official headquarters, chosen for its growing healthcare technology sector and distance from St. Louis. I flew down to sign the lease, standing in the empty space that would soon house our core team. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Cumberland River, natural light everywhere, the opposite of NorthEdge's fluorescent tomb. "Why Nashville?" Tanya asked during our regulatory strategy session. "Because it's not about where we've been, it's about where we're going." We furnished it simply standing desks, collaborative spaces, a kitchen that actually had decent coffee, no executive floors, no corner offices hoarded by people who never coded, just space to build. The trademark filing for Nerva went through without challenge. The logo, a simple neural network pattern, started appearing on Phoenix Care's devices. Subtle at first, then impossible to ignore as deployment expanded. Week 3 post-launch. Fortune's health tech reporter reached out. "I'm doing a piece on innovation in medical analytics. Phoenix Care says you're the architect behind Nerva. Can we talk?" I gave her 20 minutes, staying technical, avoiding corporate drama. But reporters have instincts. "You worked at NorthEdge Systems until recently," she noted. "They're also in the medical device space. Any connection?" "I learned a lot there," I said carefully. "But Nerva represents a completely different approach to the problem." She pushed gently. "Their stock has been volatile lately. Investors seem concerned about their innovation pipeline." I couldn't speak to that. I've been focused on building the future, not analyzing the past. The article ran with the headline, "The Engineer Who Said No to Corporate Mediocrity." She'd done her homework, traced patent filings, noticed the timing. Without saying it explicitly, she painted a picture: brilliant engineer leaves stagnant company, builds something extraordinary. NorthEdge's stock dropped 3% the day the article published. But I wasn't watching their numbers anymore. I was reviewing FDA submission packets with Tanya, planning Nerva 2.0 with the development team, interviewing engineers who actually understood distributed systems. "We got another one," Sanjay said one morning, forwarding an email. Another healthcare system wanting to switch from their current vendor, which happened to be NorthEdge, to Nerva. "Schedule the demo," I replied. "Let the platform speak for itself." My apartment in St. Louis sat mostly empty now. I'd moved the essential things to Nashville, keeping the lease for occasional returns, but home was wherever Nerva was running, wherever the next problem waited to be solved. Late at night, coding alongside my team, I sometimes thought about Conference Room B, about Vince's laugh, Diana's condescension, Marcus's dismissal. The anger had crystallized into something more useful purpose. "Hey, Aaron," Rachel messaged at 1:43 a.m. during a particularly complex debugging session. "Thanks for building something worth staying up for." I smiled at my screen, fingers never pausing on the keyboard. We're just getting started. The first quarter numbers came in: 47 healthcare systems onboarded, 99.9% uptime, 0 critical failures. Phoenix Care extended our exclusive agreement for 3 more years. But the number that mattered most was hidden in the analytics' average response time of 0.073 seconds. We'd beaten our own target. "Impossible," Bradley had called it once, reviewing my original proposals. Impossible was just another word for, "You didn't try hard enough." The first sign of trouble at NorthEdge came through LinkedIn. Former colleagues started updating their profiles with ominous phrases like "seeking new opportunities" and "open to connections." The exodus began with the smart ones, the engineers who understood what was missing. "Did you hear?" Amit forwarded me a tech blog post. NorthEdge's commercial trial got postponed indefinitely. Technical challenges, they're calling it. I read the article over morning coffee in Nashville. Anonymous sources inside North Edge described systems that couldn't scale, promises that couldn't be kept. Bradley Martinez was quoted assuring investors that these were minor optimization issues. 3 months after Nerva's launch, I was reviewing integration reports when my phone rang.